Mafia is a musical tradition created over centuries between Jewish and Muslim groups in the Ottoman Empire from about 1500 to the 1900s. To understand its significance, let me give you a brief historical background. Last week, actually, Reverend Joy gave us some history as we talked about the life of Michael Servetus, a UU forefather born 500 years ago. He was born in Spain, and that's where today's sermon begins. In 1492, to be exact. Now, what happened in 1492? Anybody know your history? Okay, you're thinking Columbus. At the time, that was actually the least significant event for the populated world. Dave?
Isabella and Ferdinand kept these Muslims out of Spain.
Isabel and Ferdinand took over the throne, and they were a powerful combination. They not only had power over the whole Iberian Peninsula, Portugal and Spain, but even had strong influence on the Pope. The Spanish Inquisition began. In that part of the world, people of many faiths and backgrounds had been living together. Quite a few Jews had traveled and moved there centuries before, some even before Christ. Christian groups soon moved there as well, and the Muslim invasion in the 8th century brought yet another faith to the area. Now, whilst there were many disputes in the northern part of Spain with conquering of different groups back and forth, there was a part of Spain in the very southern part near Africa, Andalusia, where those people actually lived together in apparent harmony for quite a few centuries. Now, then came 1492. King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella were Christians, and they wanted all to share this belief. Not just any Christian belief, but pure Catholic belief they held dear. Pure faith and pure blood was their motto. Purification was their goal, so the law changed, and everyone had to convert to Catholicism or die. For a price, the right to leave the country was offered to some. No possessions of value were allowed to go along with those people, though, so anybody leaving left poor. Many could not pay the fee to leave their homeland and had the tough choice between conversion and execution. And this wasn't just about some pretend conversion. Part of the Inquisition was an investigation in the sincerity of your conversion and whether any old practices of former religions had been left behind. Belief in any faith other than Catholicism was punishable by death. Now, the Exodus was significant. Easily, 150,000 Jews, for instance, left, and many more, Muslims, Jews, and those of other faiths, were executed. Now, the ongoing exploration of the Americas was mostly financed this way, through the properties of the exiled Jews, and the executed Jews, and the collected exile fees. So where did these 150,000 exiled Jews actually go? Many dispersed to northern Africa, which was nearby. Some actually hit some of the boats that were leaving for the Americas. They had to get out, and anything was better than staying there. Some went to northern Europe and Central Europe, where there were already some Jewish communities. And the favorite destination was the Ottoman Empire, the center of which is now Turkey. Constantinople's population at the time had been reduced quite drastically to 70,000 since they had a couple of plagues and some wars in which they didn't fare so well, so they were ready. The Sultan had an open-door policy. Any immigrant, welcome to come and join this country. So many exiled Jews settled in Constantinople and Salonika. The Sultan is said to have explained at the Spanish monarch's lack of wisdom. You call Ferdinand wise? He who makes his land poor and ours rich? See, he realized that cultural diversity allows for a richness in economy and culture, which would benefit the whole country. The new immigrants, known as Sephardic Jews, way outnumbered the resident Jews of the area, some of whose families had resided in Turkey since 500 BC. The new immigrants spoke Ladino. It is a version of Spanish with many Hebrew words and influences, kind of like Yiddish, which is part Hebrew, part German, which they spoke in Germany and Eastern Europe. Ladino was the language that was taken there. Now, the local Jews in the Ottoman Empire suddenly had to learn Ladino to get along, to be able to communicate in their neighborhoods and in their synagogues. The local culture changed significantly in a short period of time, and the culture of the Ottoman Empire was diverse. While it was officially an Islam country and the government officials were all Muslim, others had the right to practice their religion as they wished, and practice they did. And they inspired each other and exchanged ideas. There was a significant crossover between Muslim and Jewish traditions, all the way to their sacred texts. This had actually already started in Andalusia, in the south of Spain, where Jewish mystics and Sufi mystics exchanged and interchanged ideas and texts. Many passages of the sacred Jewish Kabbalah texts are verbatim translations of ancient Sufi texts from the Muslim. Now, in the Ottoman Empire, this exchange continued. Isabella and Ferdinand wanted purity of religion. That wasn't what was happening, was it? It got all muddled up. It was actually quite delightful, the interchange and cooperation that happened at the time. The rich exchange of faith and culture even affected the music, which is where my course came in, Maftirin. As a class, we learned several quite challenging songs from this musical tradition, sung in Hebrew to Old Arabic melodies. Now here's one myth of purity. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. How many notes are there between tone notes, do and re? One. Okay, you might say one. If we look at our piano, you'd be absolutely right. Between C and D, we have one note. It's called C sharp or D flat, right? Except in the Arabic tradition at the time, they had 9. 9 comas, 9 variations of degrees, which we at a class had to learn in a lot of these songs. That's why I'm not singing one right now. It isn't great. We have modes of music, major and minor. They have a couple of hundred maqams, which is their tonality and mood. Since they have so many more notes to choose from, there was an indefinite amount of combinations of tones and directions that the music could take in each maqam. So as a class, we learned history, we learned music theory, we learned theology, we learned about rituals and these songs. And we ended up performing them at the Jewish synagogue on Friday night after our course was complete. That was an amazing experience. The synagogue actually had a lot of UUs in attendance, some Jewish, some otherwise. Our professor, Dr. Ibrahim Farajade, was a wonderful example. A theology professor for decades. He is a Muslim. A Muslim who loves Judaism and Jewish studies, and who knows his Christian theology as well as anyone I know, and who was well known and beloved in the Jewish synagogue. Just meeting this man revealed and instantly destroyed many of my misconceptions about various faiths and religions. The synagogue, in turn, was also surprising. I noticed in their ritual repetition of Jewish prayers in Hebrew, the cantor at times added the name Ishmael to Israel, blessing not only those from Israel, but also the Palestinians and Arabs in the process. That was quite delightful. So as a class, while we studied history, culture, and religion, and music, our minds broadened in more ways than can be charted. I loved studying, for instance, the life of Rabbi Ariel Benison. He is known as the last Jewish Sufi. He was actually born in 1880 in Jerusalem and ended up as a rabbi in mostly Arab places. He studied texts of Muslim mystics interchangeably with Jewish mystics and brought peace among members of various faiths in whatever community his synagogue was, where he worked as a rabbi. Very powerful individual. So why did we study Naftarim, this bizarre, strange music from long ago and far away? Why does this matter? Because the Naftarim tradition of music demonstrates beautifully the intermingling of faiths, and because movements seeking purity of religion are deadly. The very motivation by Ferdinand and Isabella to have pure Catholicism turned the Iberian Peninsula into a bloodbath and the least Christian place I can imagine. Even the Protestant movement, which came into being within decades, was affected by this desire for pure teachings. Suddenly, trials of heresy and the following executions overshadowed the joyful pronouncements of the Reformation that God and Scripture are available to all.